My name is John Hancock. I'm the president of the board of the nonprofit West Plains Water Coalition. Thanks for coming tonight. Over the last 3 years, our study of West Plains PFAS keeps getting deeper and broader. It started with chemistry, geography, and health details. How to explain it simply and thoroughly, how to understand the language of the polluters and the regulators. For instance, what the industry calls an airline incident, we call a plane crash. And the engineers call us human receptors. I call us neighbors, downstreamers, if you like. Many of you have been with us in meetings like this since 2023. I hope everyone goes home tonight with 3 ideas you can remember and that you can share with people that want to know something about PFAS. We're taking questions tonight at the end. Please step up to the mic so everyone can hear, and we'll bring up the lights so the recording here gets you on camera as well. If you'd rather not speak, please write a card. Write your question on a blue card if you don't want to talk. And if you've got a story, don't tell it tonight. Rather, describe it on the card and we'll follow up to hear your story. We're a storytelling organization. This is about you. It's not just about the chemistry. And don't rush away afterwards. Each of our speakers is going to linger for more questions if you'd like. The Coalition's education mission has 4 questions. The first question is, what's PFAS? Second question is, how does it affect me? The third question is, what should I do about it? And the fourth question is, what will the government do about it? And it's the fourth question of what's going on with the government now that's really the crux of this meeting about aqueous film-forming foam. PFAS is complicated. We don't start from PFAS 101 in each of these meetings because it's a progressive path of us knowing more altogether. Thousands of our neighbors are not yet aware, and the Coalition wants to help them too. The new county task force is partnering now with the Departments of Ecology and Health and with a new project with the Spokane Regional Health District. That's the task force. There's a meeting on Wednesday, 2 nights from now, at the Sheriff's Training Center at 6 o'clock on Wednesday the 11th. Our website is a good source of basic PFAS information, and the printed materials in the back are available for your take-home. Visit westplainswater.org on the website to learn anything. We hope to provide anything that you can think up. We'd like to give you a link. But even better than our website is the PFAS webpage of the State Department of Health. Not hard to find. Just Google Washington PFAS and you'll get there. There's so much more information available about PFAS online compared with just 3 years ago. So whatever you try to search for, it's a deep and rich vein of PFAS information now at the national level. Tonight's firefighting program is our 10th meeting like this. The next one is PFAS in agriculture on March 9th at Medical Lake High School. That agenda includes 3 16-year-old neighbors from Reardon High School. 2 of them are here tonight. Would you just stand up, girls? They're presenting a PFAS status report in a public speaking competition of the future farmers of America. That's a month from tonight, and they're taking the microphone in a very sophisticated presentation, and I love the energy that they bring to us oldsters trying to figure out how the world works. Thank you for coming. And at the airport, there's lots of news from state ecology. There's a public meeting about the airport investigation on Wednesday, the 25th, at the Shriners Event Center. That's Bree and others will discuss the documents, provide an update on the investigation, answer your questions, and accept written comments. February 25th at the Shriners. I'm grateful to see so many faces here that are familiar because of our work together. As usual, we'd like to know you better. Who's a first-timer at a coalition meeting tonight? Put your hand up, please. Looks like 3. Who lives on the West Plains? Just about everybody. Who has PFAS in your drinking water? And who has a PFAS filter at your house? And who gets emails directly from Washington Ecology? I understand there's 8,000 people now on that mailing list. 1,000 on the email list. So if you sign up on their website, you get the details straight to your inbox rather than having to come through us. PFAS chemistry is really hard to understand, but we're created or evolved to respond to bad odors, bad tastes, and dangers we can see. But PFAS contaminated water is not like that. We can't see it, taste it, or smell it. How do we really know? And it's harmful to our health, measured in parts per trillion. That's like 1 second in 31,000 years, or 1 cent in $1 billion. That's how small the amounts are that are harmful. The regulatory agencies like Health, Ecology, and the EPA are doing far better now at testing and telling. But there's a lot of ground to make up towards understanding these chemicals invented nearly 100 years ago. I think it's baloney when PFAS is called an emerging contaminant. It's the story that's emerging, it's not the chemistry. Environmental pollution in the daily news is usually spills and disasters, like overturned fuel trucks on the freeway, the train wreck in Ohio, oil tankers run aground, fish kills, and ammonia leaks. But PFAS from firefighting foam is not a spill. It's decades of fire training and response, following methods and standards thought to be safe. At least 1,000 training exercises at Fairchild. PFAS underground, now over 100 square miles, wasn't known to be dangerous during 40 years of its use. What's emerging now are the facts and the health risks. The AFFF manufacturers hid the danger, and the users didn't turn back quickly enough even after they knew. Scientific uncertainty, like the link between lung cancer and tobacco, still slows down the response. As humans, we have a natural threat reflex of, whoa, that sounds dangerous, let's slow down and check. But that's not the way of inventors, patents, governments, or economics here in the US. Unlike Europe, where people are better protected, because the precautionary principle is the law. That means caution counts. A product must be proven safe before it's sold. It's backwards here. Safety is investigated after, not before. The U.S. Defense Department worked with DuPont and 3M to perfect aqueous film-forming foam. It quickly became standard procedure for airport fire safety worldwide, including FAA's requirements for 400 U.S. airports, including ours. That's our topic tonight in pictures, maps, and stories. That's the foam shot out at high pressure from fire trucks. It's the main source of West Plains PFAS. Most of the information we've received from the agencies measures PFAS in the soil and the groundwater. The firefighters used it as directed. It's not their fault. And PFAS lasts a long time in the environment. It's not totally indestructible, but it takes high heat and high pressure in an industrial setting to get rid of it. Firefighting foam and all of its rules and regulations began in the early 1970s at 700 military and 350 commercial airports in the U.S. Fairchild is on the Department of Defense's national priority list for Superfund sites, of which PFAS is the main contaminant now that we're focusing on at Fairchild. Washington has now banned PFAS in firefighting foam, and the state ecology has a buyback program to safely dispose of the remaining AFFF at fire stations. This is a small sea of firefighting foam unintentionally released in an aircraft hangar, temporarily covering a small part of the flight line at Travis Air Force Base. It's also sometimes used for structure protection. There's a photo I saw at Yellowstone of an ancient cabin covered with the white foam to protect it from an advancing wildfire. There's an organization like ours in Pennsylvania. This is one of their slides of children at a summer camp being hosed off by firemen squirting something gold out of a hose, and it's AFFF. And in nearby Reardon, I spoke with a Lions Club member who told the story about a Reardon fire truck coming back from a joint training with some PFAS left in it. They squirted it out in the alley behind the fire station. It was a hot day, and the kids rode through the suds on their bikes. They didn't know. This is an airport hangar where AFFF from overhead nozzles did fire protection for planes in the hangar. I heard a story at Fairchild about a painting contractor in a hangar who was moving a big rolling scaffolding, knocked off one of those sprinkler heads. The whole building filled up with foam, and nobody came running there wasn't an alarm, nothing happened. So the foam from a building like this may go down the drain into the sewer, or it may go out the door into the gravelly front yard. We're not sure about that. The Air Force doesn't tell very many stories about its use of firefighting foam at Fairchild, and the Fairchild investigation engineers aren't in on photos like this about what happened. They're just involved in the cleanup. But one of our neighbors, Scott Miracle, who used to work at Fairchild, has some stories of his own about firefighting foam. Please meet Scott.
Thank you. My name is Scott Miracle. My wife and I were in the Air Force. We're in the Air Force from 82 to 2002, and we were at Fairchild from 86 to 99. When we first got to Fairchild, I was working in the weapons storage area, the WSA. While I was out there from late 86 through 88, several occurrences happened while I was there. We had a KC-135 crash that happened in 1987, which was so close to the WSA area that they told us that we had to stay inside because of the toxic fumes and stuff that came over the top of us. When we were allowed to leave and go home, they were still, of course, clean up and fire trucks everywhere. And as we were driving away, you could see the foam in the grass along the fence line. It was thick. Although my stories are very short, they're a testimony of the amount of foam that was used even back in the early 80s, late 80s when I was there. My other story was working still again in the WSA area, and I have a hard time recalling exactly what year it was, but I believe it was right after the crash. In the weapons storage area is where we stored all the nukes and things. And I worked on the trailers that delivered the nukes to the B-52s. And right next to us was an area where it was a hangar, a storage hangar. And one day, all of a sudden, we heard all these sirens and fire trucks and everything right outside our building. So when we all came out, we saw one of the hangars with the doors all closed, but foam billowing out from underneath from the doors. And it was this situation right here. I don't know what caused it. Nobody ever told us what happened. But I remember we were all, 200 yards away from it, and you could just see the foam coming up from underneath the doors. I wasn't on base when the B-52 crashed, but after seeing all people's pictures that they had taken with the foam all over the flight line, it's just a testimony to how much foam is used, and those are just 3 huge instances that I know of, and that's only at Fairchild Air Force Base. I have a very close friend that is a retired Air Force firefighter, and he was telling me some stories about how they would spray foam across the flight line for either a actual plane coming in with no landing gear or practice. And he said that was a pretty common occurrence. They'd wash their trucks with it because they said it was just like a really highly concentrated soap. And he's blown away by what's happening now and all the information that's coming to light about PFAS. That's my story. Thank you.
And we'll take questions at the end of the evening, including some that Scott may help to answer. This is just another photo of an after cleanup where the hoses, like you said, and the trucks just get rinsed off. That was described as like dish soap. And I heard a story from a firefighter that said he remembers seeing people washing dishes in the fire station in AFFF because the suds, and it was good. It was a good grease remover for the concrete pad in front of the fire station, like high pressure wash, because it dissolves into water really easily. The next slide here. This is a training film by the FAA on chemical hazards and safety at airports. So this is produced by the FAA.
There are many types of extinguishing agents. Successful ARF operations require selecting the best agent for the job. Each agent has advantages and limitations, equipment requirements, and unique application techniques. Agents include foam, water, dry chemicals, dry powders, and approved halogenated agents such as Halon 1211 or Halotron 1. Foam acts as a floating barrier, suppressing vapor release and preventing air from contacting vapors. As foam is applied to fire, it breaks down and its water content vaporizes. Therefore, foam must be applied to a burning surface in sufficient volume at an adequate rate and reapplied as necessary. Water is an excellent cooling agent to protect and cool the fuselage. Water uses a high-velocity, high-pressure pushing application technique. It can be used to relocate and sweep burning fuel away from exposures. Water can also be used to furnish personnel protection from high heat situations. However, using water streams over an established foam blanket will reduce the integrity of the seal created by the foam blanket. Dry chemicals are abrasive and corrosive and leave a residue. At least one ARF vehicle required by the index must carry sodium-based.
And this next film is a half-an-hour film about firefighters in Boston. And this is the trailer of the film. It's available to you to watch on YouTube. We asked for permission to show the whole film tonight. We didn't get that permission. So here's just a teaser about firefighters and a story that is shocking to me.
I loved being a firefighter. There's something about flying down the road, in a fire truck that kids dream of. I had 3 or 4 years to go to retirement. A week later, I was at home and I got a phone call from my doctor.
So I automatically thought, oh, well, this is going to be fine. Nothing's going to be wrong here at all. Phew, we dodged this one. All of a sudden, the doctor says, yep, it's cancer. I just had to find out why.
Here's the spouse of a firefighter who writes me and says she thinks PFAS is being used in their gear. And it's the first I'd heard of it. Can you send me a sample of the gear? I'd be happy to test it.
And I have 44 names so far on my list. Brother firefighters, diagnosed with cancer,
wondering what to do next.
I was horrified when, slightly more than a month into the research, he called us and said, we need to stop the study. We need to tell firefighters.
I had a fire wife on social media pleading for someone to listen to her. That was Diane Carter.
She was right. There is no reason we should have carcinogens in our personal protective equipment. It defies logic.
At the National PFAS Conference. And he was the National Health Director of the International Firefighters Union. His name was Neil McMillan. And he agreed to come to Spokane and give a talk about firefighters. He was here a month later for a training exercise in the Valley, but went to other kinds of work, and we weren't able to go ahead with Neil's help. But I've learned a lot about the National Firefighters Union's PFAS work over the last 10 years of advocacy and education for their own members towards both scientific research and policy changes that will make firefighting a lot safer from this PFAS perspective. In the past, it was thought that cancer was primarily caused by inhalation, but now the science is out that the waterproof clothing has a lot of PFAS as we get the details in this film. I just want to keep saying it's not the fault of the firefighters. They've just been poisoned in a different way than we have. And to keep telling the stories about AFFF, I'd like you to meet Julie Molzon. She's retired from the U.S. Forest Service. She lives in Airway Heights, and she's a board member of the coalition. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, John. So I am going to talk, and John reminded me of Yellowstone. So Yellowstone, 1988, big fires. We had the 87 fires in California, and then Yellowstone. And my husband's engine strike team was the one that was protecting the lodge. And so they did put AFFF in their Type 3 engines from California, the big ones. And they squirted and foamed all the buildings around Yellowstone Lodge, and they were doing structure protection there. My husband died of cancer, colon cancer, in 2019, and right now the United States Forest Service is losing one firefighter a month to cancer, mostly retired, but we are losing one a month to cancer. And it's because everybody, we're on the grave fire and all that stuff. Do you remember the guys with the green pants? PFAS. Our Nomix has PFAS in it. I wore these for 35 years. This is my shirt. Wore it for 35 years. We didn't change out like structure protection, folks. We got assigned our gear. You keep it forever. And what they're learning is the longer we wear it, the more the chemicals. So one of the jokes in the Forest Service, especially in the 80s and 90s, is you knew how long somebody was firefighting because you didn't have hair on your legs as a man. As a female, I never had to shave my legs because the PFAS in our pants ate through we just didn't have hair on our legs. Some women didn't even have to shave under their arms because we wore this. Not like turnout gear where you take it off. We wore these all day long, every day. So it's not just structure firefighters, but it's in our gear. This is a breast jacket, our equivalent of a turnout. I've had this breast jacket since 1990. So, firefighting gear, and that's the burned, and I'm going to have Randy Marler's going to talk in a little bit about what's going on here. What they're finding out in many areas is that cancer is prevalent in firefighters. In San Francisco, right now, they're finding that the women firefighters have 6 times the breast cancer of the normal population. So it's bad, and there's laws and things that are being passed. The state of Washington passed the first ones in 2018. California followed suit. Oregon's followed suit in New Hampshire to outlaw PFAS in firefighting turnout gear. Now, the problem we're having is there's no real replacement right now. So, and the other piece of the pie is it more important to have the protective gear, or is it more important to risk the cancer? The other piece of the pie that John wanted me to talk about a little bit was how many people here live in the area of the Gray Fire? Well, nobody's raising their hand, but I was part of the work I did for the Forest Service was on the record of decision for the firefighter retardant. So one thing I want to assure you of is when the air tankers drop the retardant, it's essentially fertilizer. It's ammonium phosphates. So we have studied it. We have done extensive studies. You get the pink or the red, that's because the air tankers need to know where it was dropped, so the next air tanker in can drop next to it. It will paint your house red, and it may be very difficult to get out of your house, off your car, but it's not going to hurt you. The only thing it really hurts is because it's such concentrated fertilizer, it hurts fish. It has to stay out of the waterways. But if anybody has any questions on retardant, I have all the information you need and where to go to get it. So I'm going to ask Randy Marler to come up. He's the president of the International Association of Firefighter Union here in Spokane to talk about his experience with PFAS.
Thank you. Yeah, like some of these other speakers said, I don't have anything prepared for statements. I just lived through the experience of being a firefighter, and since 2001, I know when I came on, like your friend said, our department's, our standards were, we have this foam in our tank. When firefighters go, the weapon we bring is water, right? Like we have to train in putting our water out, getting out of the hoses, using our reductors, using the foam, using all that stuff. We don't want to do that for the first time, with our foam. So we regularly would practice dumping our entire tanks of AFFF on the ground for training. And then we'd goof off in it because we're immature people that because we have jobs as firefighters, we never have to grow up. So, we didn't know. And the employers didn't tell us either when we stopped getting it. I think they stopped manufacturing AFFF in 2002. And our departments didn't tell us this stuff is bad. They just said we're not buying it anymore. But we still had it, and I think we could still use it until, I think our department phased it out before 2018 because we're busy and we put it on the ground all the time. But we didn't have to stop using it until 2018, so all the stockpile still got used, and we just ran out of it. There was no, oh, hey, this stuff's bad for you. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, we were under the mindset that, once you put it in your tank, this stuff is, got a shelf life of like 3 to 5 years. So, whatever, every couple of years you'd run a drill and you just drain all your foam out. And then we'd plant it. So we did that for years. I mean, they did that in the 80s, they did it in the 90s, they were doing that still in the 2000s, 30 years of putting it down on the ground, polluting our waterways here, polluting each other. And cancer is the leading cause of deaths in the fire service now. Cancers that are linked to occupational hazards that we have. The AFFF, the foam, the PFAS is part of it in our gear as well. Every day we put our gear on, we're exposed. When we go into these structure fires, the heat breaks it down, it permeates through your skin through absorption, and there's no alternatives. And I'll tell you, I'm going to obviously give my personal plug, but it wasn't the employers that fought this fight for us. It's because we're a unionized workforce, and we have a union that cares about its members. And our union took this fight, and we're taking this fight to the chemical companies. The grand scheme of things in our international, we're only a 300,000 person union, which is really small. But we're motivated. We know our purpose as a union is to protect our members, protect them from hazards, from the things that your employers aren't going to tell you about because they don't want to be exposed to the liability. So I'm very thankful I'm part of a union. I'm very thankful that our union has picked up this fight. And it's going to be a long road to go because the chemical companies have a lot more money than we do. But we hope through dialogue with community, we gain support of the public, and the public understands that we were very much part of this problem that affects all of you. We're still part of the problem for affecting our members. We choose to put the gear on every day. We choose to expose ourselves to these cancers because I chose this career to help you guys when you're in need. And I have no problem with that. I just think it's time that these chemical companies found a better way so that I don't have to expose myself to extra cancers so that I can do my job to protect you guys. That's all I got.
Thank you, Randy. I hope this is not our last evening together. Thank you. I'm happy to say that the state of Washington is in the lead nationally on PFAS response. And this is a little chart that explains all the different new regulations and rules and laws that have come into being in the last few years. So the firefighting part that Randy was talking about is right here. So it's been banned from sale, and the remaining stockpiles of AFFF are being purchased back by Ecology and headed towards destruction or permanent landfill safety somewhere else. And I'm glad that I live in Washington because we've got this progressive suite of improvements here. But that doesn't mean it's perfect yet. But the bans in consumer goods, for instance, in one state, like Washington, trigger to the manufacturers that, there's something going on here with protection. And what happens in a state like Washington or Michigan or New Jersey or California really sets the stage for PFAS regulations in states that are a little farther behind. So there's a lot going. I'm grateful to our partners at Ecology, Department of Health for pushing ahead on not just the rules, but the funding necessary to implement and enforce these standards. So the pizza boxes from local pizza outfits no longer have PFAS in the wax paper, for instance. And all this list of cosmetics, leather and textile furnishings, carpets and rugs, apparel and accessories, the car wash, and cleaning products. They're all gradually getting better. And you'll find more and more products, if you look closely, that say PFAS-free. I encourage you to get in the habit of taking a look at any of those waxy products that work so well but have had PFAS in the past. Perhaps not so much in the future. This is Deep Creek behind my house. Just a couple weeks ago, I live on Garfield Road on the north side of our aquifer. And here's the close-up view of what I suspect may be PFAS in the creek water. There are other biological agents that also cause the foam. Chad Pritchard reports it in Medical Lake. He said his kids used to play in the suds. They don't anymore, not when he's watching. But it's the nature of the foam for the firefighters that whips up the foam in any sort of water that has PFAS in it. And it can, in the foam, it can be up to 3,000 times more potent in the foam than in the water from which it comes. And a little further down the creek at Stephanie's house, same water, a much bigger pile of suds. And the gap at the top was caused by her long-haired collie wading through the creek and coming home with PFAS to her house. So the science of proving that this PFAS water came from Fairchild isn't quite finished yet. Ecology's working on it. So I suspect it because the PFH excess that Chad found in this creek water is in my blood, it's in Jane's blood, and it's in our drinking water. So that's the pattern that we see as neighbors of how all these different ways of testing may add up to the same story. This is a page from 31,000 pages of the remedial investigation at Fairchild. Scott talked about the plane crashes. You can see them here. B-52 crash right there. Aircraft crash right there. The other hot spots are the Air Force training ground here, where they have a fuselage that they light on fire and practice putting out. And that may have been as many as 1,000 times, 1,000 training episodes in that one place at the base. It's also high at the fire station, right there. But highest of all is the groundwater that runs from the training section downstream through what's called No Name Ditch, past West Thorpe Road, runs east and west. This is Craig Road, north and south. And there are homeowner tests in that neighborhood of up to 3,000 parts per trillion in home water. And as far as I know, the groundwater test in this site near the training was pegged at 188,000 parts per trillion. 188,000 parts. And it's legal now at 4 and 4 and 10. And not any dirt has been yet moved at Fairchild, and there's no groundwater filtration yet underway. So the 5-year remedial investigation that was just published is the next stage of the plan towards what the feasibility study, that is, what to do about it next. But it's a really slow motion project. The next RAB meeting is, I think, on the April 5th. Back at the Shriners, you'll get a newsletter about that invitation. And those of you that live in this plume, I know you're paying attention, and I'm grateful for that because that's what's going to take to keep the pressure on through the RAB at Fairchild to keep going. The other RAB members that are here tonight are Hank Beinecker. Hank, throw your hand up. And Nick Acklam from Ecology. That's Nick in the back with the brown coat. So we keep working at Fairchild on these issues, and your comments are always helpful to us to say how you're feeling about Fairchild cleanup. And this 31,000 page report is, of course, available through the Air Force Fairchild's PFAS website. But it's not easy for me to handle or read a 31,000 page document. So we need all the help with storytellers and interpreters that we can find. So any of you who want to put an oar in the water, we're paddling upstream as far as we can go towards the source, but we need more paddlers. So we're always looking for volunteers to help us with the hard going here on the science. And speaking of science, Dr. Pritchard made a preliminary report in November of the results of his 2-year study about groundwater. And we call this the heat map. The people in blue are probably in the clear, and the people in red are the highest risk zones of measured PFAS in drinking water. Here is a detail of the north half of the neighborhood, and I see what looks like a blob of red right there that corresponds on the map with fire station number 5, which serves my neighborhood with volunteer firefighters. And Bree's going to talk about this in just a moment. And here she is, Bree Brinkman from Washington Ecology.
All right, we got the switch off. All right, so general disclaimer, I am not a firefighter. never have been. Known lots of lovely firefighters in my lifetime. Grew up with them. My dad was a police officer, so I had firefighters over at my house all the time. My academic experience has me dipped my toe in a lot of fire science. So the specifics behind the chemistry of what goes into turnout gear or to fighting wildfires. I will say that in terms of ecology, we do not have a public policy in place for investigating fire stations at this time. It's something that's on our wish list and something that we're looking forward to. Right now, we have partnered with Department of Health. They have put together a PFAS dashboard. Has anybody seen that? Essentially, it evaluates all of the Class A wells. The Class A are the large wells that have more than 25 people using them. In the eastern region where we are, however, not too many areas actually have Class A wells located next to fire stations. It's typically Class B, which aren't regulated to the same degree as Class A. So we're kind of using this dashboard as a way to see this is where the contamination, this is where we need to investigate and see how we can help kind of clean up in those areas. And we have had a few hits that have kind of given us an idea of what to do. John mentioned that we do have a disposal program. It is not a buyback, but we will take the AFFF off firefighters' hands and safely dispose of it. It goes to a hazardous waste facility in Utah where it gets 100% destroyed. That was just basically launched this past September. We have 23 fire stations that have already provided their AFFF for disposal, and we have about another 80 that are on the current list to be part of this program. So we are very fortunate in the past 3 years that we have been able to generate a lot of different information regarding PFAS in the West Plains. So we have Dr. Chad Pritchard's area-wide groundwater grant, which again looked at quarterly sampling along with some one-time sampling in the area. Before that ever occurred, though, we did have several individuals that were able to do their own testing, usually through Anatech Labs here in Spokane, that really brought to our attention this issue on the West Plains. We were able to partner with the EPA to sample 411 wells in 2024 to give us a bevy of information. However, it was voluntary for those individuals to provide Department of Ecology with the results. So we've received to date about 241 of those 411 wells. The fun thing is the majority of those are the ones that are impacted. So a lot of people who had non-detect wells did not share that information with us, which is okay because we really wanted to get out and set up programs so that we could help the people who had contaminated wells. We also have 3 different listed sites in the West Plains areas. So Fairchild obviously is an active site through Superfund. Ecology assists with that cleanup action. We also have the Spokane International Airport, which we listed, and we're currently undergoing an initial investigation for PFAS currently, which will move us into our first remedial investigation forthcoming. We listed Fire Station 10-5 last September because of some of these data sources that we looked into. So I'm going to go a little science nerdy on everybody because this is like my bread and butter, but I try to do it in a way that makes sense for everyone. But this is all our results from the EPA portion of the study. So we have our 269 wells that we provided information or independently gave that to us. What this is it's a histogram. So it's letting us know how many fall into these certain buckets. So this first bucket is homes that were just detected up to 8 parts per trillion total PFAS. So that's generally, we would say, that's typically safe to drink. You might encourage different alternatives for Department of Health if you wanted to have a filter. but generally is okay. We have between 9 and 70 parts per trillion, which was the old lifetime health advisory. We have 67 homes. This bucket is from 71 to 100 parts per trillion. We have 14 in that. We have, I think this is 101 to 200, it looks like. And then this one we have, I think it goes up to 500. And then you can kind of see we're starting to kind of go lower. This bucket right here is total PFAS between 1,000 and 1,500 parts per trillion. We have one little over here, and this was 10 times more. So it was 16,000 parts per trillion. That is what we call an outlier in the statistics world. That lets us know that something is going on because it doesn't fit with the rest of the data. So, oh, this one shows up. So if we go and we look, that one piece of data was Fire Station 10.5. Now, they had sampled their own well independently in, I believe, October of 22. And you can see about 7,000 parts per trillion total PFAS at that time. I call these my little tin soldiers. This lets me know what kind of composition is in the PFAS. This is an AFFF signature. And again, if I get really science on you, but essentially this orange part is one of the chemicals that we see only close to source zones. It's 6.2 FTS. So it's got like a branch on it, so it doesn't like to go through our water system as easily as our linear ones. So you can kind of see it has that consistent pattern during all its sampling events. It was also sampled by the EPA in March of 2024, and then Chad sampled it as part of the area-wide groundwater grant. Now, one thing that's interesting are, typically these four roughly are what you would normally see, especially at high concentrations. There's going to be a little bit of variation. Any guesses? This is the professor in me. Why is March and April so much higher? Rain. So when it rains, we get over double the concentration in their well. That is another kind of key indicator that something is going on. And especially when you go and you look at the data and the water upstream is very low, and that kind of gives us an idea of what's going on. Granted, again, they might say they might not have any records of AFFF. That's fine. Again, our biggest deal is making sure that we can find the sources and we can clean it up. Because we're not going to be able to clean up 100 square miles of aquifer system. We can only clean up the source zones where we have that concentration that's really high. And when we remove that, it helps flush the system as a whole. It's kind of like treating, well, not quite like treating cancer, but you want to go for the tumor before you go for the whole body, for the whole chemo. I know that's a horrible analogy, especially with this topic, but so we listed the site in September of 25, and we're currently doing something a little bit different with this site. As it is a fire station, we are at Ecology are basically taking the lead on the site assessment. So we're using our legislative funds to investigate and do some soil sampling to determine if the AFFF was actually used on property. This will help let us know if we need to do any basically removal actions, and let us know if we have to do further investigation as well. So if you want to be updated about this site or any of our sites on Ecology, it's actually quite easy to do. I do this all the time. I don't type in the address. I just say Fire Station Ecology 10.5. It will load you to this page. And we do have a new feature on all of our website or public-facing websites. In that, you can subscribe to get an email anytime this page gets updated. So that occurs anytime we have a report submitted or we get any communication from the responsible party or Ecology provides documents. It will get uploaded to our document center and you're able to download it from there. So we have a similar page for Spokane International Airport and for Fairchild. So we do submit all of the same reports for all three of those locations. We also have our contact information for whoever's the site manager on that site. So if you do have a question about the site, you know who to contact. Oftentimes, some of our smaller sites might just have a general Ecology contact. You can contact that, and it will go to the appropriate person. And again, most of you know me a little bit, but if you do need to get a hold of me, I can be reached either by cell or by email.
Thanks, Bree. As always, it's a big load of progress, seems like to me, I'm happy to say. We shouldn't go much further without just touching on the airport. And again, the February 25th meeting is all about the airport. But in the meantime, here's just one of the pages of the hundreds, not far fewer documents than Fairchild puts out, but it's all dense and wonderful. This is in the purple, the airport hot zone property in general. The hot spots here are identified in a similar way as they're called out at Fairchild with statistics and maps. And I just want to read a little bit to you from the documentation that the airport has written to Ecology. This is from December of 2024. The headline is Initial PFAS Investigation Work Plan at Spokane International Airport. This is, and the analytical hydroengineering is being done by an organization called GSI Environmental, Inc. This work plan focuses on the areas of the site as areas of potential or known concern for a release of AFFF. The review of available information resulted in the identification of 10 potential or known PFAS areas of concern. These areas have either PFAS detections in the local groundwater or have the potential to have PFAS present in the local environment due to the storage, handling, and FAA-required testing of AFFF. So just to summarize, here's the list of 10 areas subject to future investigation. The current firehouse, the area used for FAA inspections and testing, the fire maintenance area, which has AFFF storage and equipment maintenance, the old airport firehouse, they call it historical firehouse, the joint fire training area, and the military burn pit, and that was used by the Air Force, the airport, and the Air National Guard. On West Park Drive, near the waste-to-energy plant, the stormwater recovery area, the land treatment area. This area is used to land apply the aircraft de-icing fluid collected from the airplanes. And de-icing is not PFAS. That's a whole different alcohol-based chemistry, not PFAS. The former Geiger Field area, it says there are no known AFFF activities in the immediate area, but PFAS was detected in the groundwater at the monitoring well. And the Triangle Ramp training area where firefighter training was conducted. Excuse me, sometimes with water only, as we heard in the film, sometimes with AFFF. So all of this detail is available on the same airport website that looks just like the one that we saw, the cleanup. There's a lot there. There's 38 separate documents. Again, we could use help from people helping us understand what it says with more science than it's not my background. I'm just a guy in the neighborhood. This is the look of the West Plains Water Coalition at westplainswater.org. If you haven't visited here, I urge you to take a turn. And That's all for the formal part of the program. Let's now turn up the lights, step up to the microphone, and ask a question. We'll do our best to get an answer from one of our experts. If you've got a blue card with a question, hand it to one of our volunteers, and we're eager to hear what you have to say about PFAS. Hank, step up, please, to the microphone.
Yeah. I am standing up. Hi, Bree. This question is going to be directed to you, so you'll need that microphone again.
I'm used to this.
Yeah, I know you are. Can you explain to all of us what it means when the liability for the cleanup at the Spokane International Airport lies with the city of Spokane and Spokane County?
I am not a lawyer. I'm going to start that. That is my disclaimer. There's a reason I do these disclaimers because we do have a wonderful legal staff that would explain this in way better detail than I can. But the way that MOTCA, which is our environmental law here in the state of Washington, Model Toxics Control Act, I know you really wanted to know what that acronym stood for. It's late. I'm already kind of losing my edge. So there are two key things in order to list a site. It's one, they have to be an owner, or two, they have to be an operator of the site. City of Spokane and Spokane County are actually joint owners, yeah, that's the correct word, of the Spokane International Airport, which is run by the Spokane International Airport Board as an independent party. So they are owners and operators, and under MOTCA, we're able to list them as a potentially liable person. Right, Nick? Good. I got the thumbs up from my boss.
And are taxpayer funds going to be used for any of this?
I mean, there's already, this Spokane County has already had $7.5 million from the legislators, so that's part of it. But MOTCA actually runs outside of, it comes from a special tax on hazardous compounds. So it's not the same fund as your dollars going into that. So it's slightly different, I will say that. But the airport also has its own source of funds that the FAA will allow them to use for any investigation. In terms of the county and the city, again, I'm not their accountant. I can't tell that. So, Nick, anything to add on that? Okay. I love talking money.
Just a real quick question. I noticed on the dating of the airport's testing, it was 2019.
Yep.
How come didn't a lot of us know about this back in 2019?
Air Force or the airport?
Airport.
Airport. Yes. So at the time, so this is after Fairchild had started their investigation. Remember, at that time, PFAS was not basically a regulated compound. We had not labeled it as toxic, which means they had no requirement to report it to us until we said, hey, this is a toxic compound. If you do anything with it, you have to let us know. And so that those previous testings were before the state of Washington labeled it as a toxic substance. But a great question. Uh, 22, I believe. A lot of dates in there. Yes.
So, PFAS in general?
Oh. I mean, I can use my professor's voice.
Yeah. So PFAS in general, though, prior to 2019, was on, I mean, yes or no, was on the radar of Ecology.
Yes, it was on our radar, but we didn't have any regulatory authority to force any, well, not force, but to do anything with it.
Okay.
And remember, at that time, that was before we even had federal regulations as well.
when did federal regulations
Right
drop?
in the middle of the EPA sampling event. So I know that was 2024. I can tell that with clarity.
Okay.
Because we were scrambling in the middle because they changed the game.
And so is the working relationship between EPA and Department of Ecology, I mean, are you guys kind of sidestep with each other then?
It's a little bit different at the federal level. At the regional level, because EPA is so large, we do work pretty closely with our counterparts there to understand what's going on. There's a lot of policy changes that go into effect. So I guess the short and sweet answer would be yes.
Okay. Back to Station 5.
Yes.
So when was that site detected in regards to contamination?
So as I mentioned, that was part of the area-wide groundwater grant. So as Chad was able to provide that data, I investigated it as that outlier because I was the one crunching all of the data that everybody sent me. That is something, we were able to look at. We had some concerned citizens provided us with some of their previous tests and public records requests. We were able to use that as part of our determination as well. So it wasn't until we got the data from the area-wide groundwater grant because they did not provide us the EPA data.
So just pretty recently.
Pretty recently, which is why it was September of last year.
Right. So why the difference in regards to the rate of moving on working to mitigate on 5 versus having information back to 19-ish, even though you guys weren't regulating by then, still having that and not working as fast with the airport?
This is a good one. We needed soil data. So here's the thing, groundwater moves. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say that it's from this location until we can actually confirm that, hey, you have it in your soil at levels that allow leaching to occur. Leaching is moving from that soil phase into the liquid phase. So we needed to have that data. So that's a key piece of data in order to further our investigation. We can say, they could say, hey, we never used AFFF. It could be true. They could say, hey, this is just a huge plume from Fairchild. That could be true. So you have to tie it into a source, and that is typically in the soil. So that is why it's so important. And if we look at Fairchild and we look at the airport, these are extremely large sites. Fire Station 10.5 is an acre. It's going to be a lot easier to sample and identify the extent of the contamination, if it exists, than it would be when we have multiple locations on active Air Force Base or an active runway of an airport, which I was out there for the sampling at the airport. Whew, it's crazy being that close to planes taking off. So there are a lot of different special considerations that are taken into consideration when working at these locations too.
So not getting access to soil samples.
Yeah, well, getting soil samples is kind of the key indicator to determine if there's an actual source zone.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And our upcoming airport report will have soil data in it.
It makes me crazy sometimes that Bree is so cautious about what she says. But on the other hand, I'm grateful because it's a high-stakes legal thing that she and her colleagues are working on everywhere. Because if they make a mistake in exaggerating or missing or misquoting, they're in serious financial peril, which could jeopardize the whole investigation. And I don't want to ever do anything to contribute to any of that risk. And so her degree of certainty about what she's allowed to say is in a different ballpark than me and by the coalition. And any of us that live in the country know that rainwater and surface water and runoff water and wastewater and drinking water, it's all just water. But all those different kinds of water have a different agency and a different set of regulations that divides up the world of water into rules and regulations, and they can't color outside the lines. But if we don't, if you and I don't, then we're dependent too much on the authorities come to rescue us. we have to make up our own minds about our own safety and do something if we can, if we decide. And we can go faster than the airport investigation on our own property and in our own faucet, and in our own conversations with our doctors. So don't wait for certainty before you decide that PFAS is something to pay attention to, please. More questions. Don't be shy. Nick.
No. Nick Scharf. So I live right next to Station 5. I was the chief out there for many years too. So I hear the pain, what Randy's talking about. But I'm going to throw this out as like you don't have anything to do, Bree. But probably all of that foam that was used over the years probably came in a 5-gallon bucket or a tote. And where did those go that had a quart or half a gallon in them? We have numerous unlined landfills in Spokane County. I know we're looking at the hot spots, but I'm just thinking a little further down the road, where did all that stuff go? We got the city landfill, Marshall landfill, Beelers, Graham Road, that's supposedly lined, but lined with what? Dirt, clay, 3 feet thick, or what?
Clay usually, if it's lined. But yeah, we do look, Ecology does investigate landfills. So that's part of kind of what we do. In Spokane, we have the waste to energy facility. Remember, AFFF really wasn't used with any frequency until the 1970s. Most of the landfills were closed prior to that. Some not so much, but that is something, you know, as we get with closures of landfills, which is kind of again, a different agency. Spokane Regional Health District is really with the closure of landfills. Once they become a toxic waste site, that's when it comes to our department for looking and monitoring and cleaning up. So yes, that is one of the things we look at landfills.
Thank you. And I know there's landfills out here that are long covered up that probably we'll never see again.
Scotch guard couches.
Yeah, township dumps and so on. And I bring this up because it's 100 square miles or more on the West Plains, and I think we got multiple sources. We need to take care of the most serious first, and I think we're on track, hopefully, to do that. Maybe I'll see some of that, maybe. But it takes time. You talk about that original order was, 2 years ago, and we don't even have soil samples yet at the airport that you can depend on. So this
is coming shortly.
Well, hopefully I'm going to hear something different at the end of the month. But to date, I've heard nothing. And I've, installed filters myself for my household, but it's done nothing for the livestock, the garden, or anything outside. And I can't afford to do anything more. So I'm continuing to spread PFAS. But anyhow, thanks everybody for doing what you're doing. But it's a big issue. It's the asbestos on steroids.
A national policy guy said to me at the national conference, imagine the combination of tobacco, asbestos, and lead, and the PFAS may be bigger than all three of those issues combined. Cashley.
Cashley Brown from the Rudin FFA chapter doing the presentation on PFAS contamination on the West Plains. So last week I came back from Olympia at the legislative session, and there I was able to talk to many legislators, especially about PFAS, like legislators from the 22nd District and the 39th. And they knew what PFAS was. They knew that it was an issue, but they don't know the full spread. They don't know what the West Plains is or what's happening over there. How is there a way to, is there a way for politicians to know what this is, especially coming up into next year's legislative session? Like, is there a way to spread this issue so they know that this needs to be talked about, this needs to be passed in bills, this needs to come up in committee? We're able to get this to the public, but how are we able to get it to the state and the federal political level?
By doing what you just did, talking to them one at a time. But I'd also like to say that Julie Molzon, the same speaker, is the leader of the Coalition's Advocacy Committee. So she's in charge of the answers and the plans. But I want to tell you that if we back up 2 years in my efforts to talk to legislators, they all just looked out the window. Right. But they're not looking out the window anymore, as you're starting to find out, because none of them now can afford to be ignorant. Because when their voters ask them something and they don't know the answer, that means they've got work to do on our behalf, is to get the answers. But it's real easy now for any of us to send an email to our legislator. On our website, there's a page that has how to contact your legislator. You just click through from the information that we have on our website. And we're trying to make it easy. And the best story for your legislator is the one you tell about your water. You don't have to quote the national statistics. You don't have to quote Bree. You can just tell what it feels like to you, because those people are in Olympia to be responsive to what our life is like on the West Plains. And the PFAS is not just here. It's also in Sela and Issaquah and near McCord, and we're not the only place. But there are influential people that are coming around. Mike Volz was the sponsor of the $7 million legislation before. He's leading the charge, I think, on $10 million more that we're asking this month. It's not an easy time for the budget. But we at least need another $1 million to get a free test for everybody on the map. So that's the minimum we need to go forward, because the $7 million we got right now is just for hardware. It's not for testing. So a lot of people who can't afford a $400 test are in health risks that's just as high as the ones who have a test in hand. And Cashley, thank you for your questions and for your work in Olympia. Come back in a month and hear her talking about PFAS.
This is probably what?
Okay.
This may seem like a silly question, but I don't know who to even ask. But when we bought our property, we got several fire extinguishers to be able to, figure out if there was a fire, how to put it out real quick. And then last Christmas, we got these fire blankets from a son-in-law. And what do you do with those? Do they have PFAS in them? Do we have to throw them away and then buy all new ones? What do we do?
Randy, can you take a turn on this one? Come on up.
I know in our gear, when we first brought up the chemicals in our gear, the chemical companies regened our equipment and said they took it all out. They lied, and it was still in our gear. So when we did further testing, so transparency with the chemical companies hasn't exactly been stellar, right? The levels got so low that they're like, it won't hurt you now, or it won't get out of the gear now. So we don't have to report it. So, I think anything that is meant to be long-term, long-lasting, heat protective, I would have my doubts that it has PFAS in it. But, if you're not, if you're using it when your stovetop catches fire, it's better than burning your house down.
Yeah.
Throwing it on there, I wouldn't play with it. I wouldn't train with it. I wouldn't have it out for my kids and my grandkids to, to mess with. That's kind of our thing about the fire service too. We grew up with our kids coming to the fire station and putting our gear on them because it was cute, and now we think about all the cancer that we didn't know, and so those cute pictures of our kids with our gear on is kind of devastating now when you think about it. You're like, I just exposed my kids to cancer. So, but it's what we have still. And like I said, if the alternative is, not putting out your stovetop fire, I would use your blanket.
Well, what about the fire extinguisher canisters that we bought?
Yeah, the what's inside of them?
Yeah.
That's probably fine. That's probably fine. There's none of those that I know of are foam based. It's a dry chem, water, or CO. It's I don't think there's any. I don't know of any pre-plumbed foam extinguishers. So the stuff that's in your extinguishers is probably fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's reassuring.
I should say that not all foam is AFFF. There's different levels of foam. For like household stuff, there's actually there's different mechanisms for different chemicals. So PFAS is a little bit different. It acts as kind of a suppression. It's also in Scotchgard. It's the reason why their gear doesn't weigh 5 times after they've been spraying a structure with water after they're doing it. So it's to prevent that water from absorbing into their gear. There are a bunch of other potentially carcinogenic compounds that are also exposed through their gear. Polybrominated diphenyl ethers, PBDEs. Those are the ones that are actually in their gear so it doesn't catch fire. For a long time, it's actually been banned now, but it was in our computers, it was in our TVs. It's to stop the ignition of fire. So there are different mechanisms for different chemicals. And I'm going to pull a trivia because I'm ultra nerdy. The first foam, do you remember what it came from? Like the first firefighting foam, what it was made out of? It's protein foam. Yeah, they went to slaughterhouses and got the blood, and you basically aerate it, and it was this nice foam blanket, and that's how they used to do it before AFFF. Horrible. E. coli up the wazoo. I mean, your well would not be usable after that. But that was what we used before AFFF, and it would stink for months. So again, there's a reason why we're improving. We do have fluorine-free AFFF alternatives that do the similar thing. However, they don't work as great as the PFAS version. One of the cool things about AFFF is that it's almost like a self-healing blanket during application. And that's really important so that ignition does not reoccur. So because of those fluorines like to stick together, they create this nice blanket. Whereas the new fluorine-free foams, the application is much more on the firefighter's shoulders. So there is kind of a pro and con to using kind of the new developed. They still meet the recommendations that needed for extinguishing a fire in a certain amount of time. So they still meet what we need them to do, but they are a little trickier to use.
There's a portable fire extinguisher story from Whidbey Island. We've got a volunteer expert who advises us here who lives on Whidbey, and he explained that there were handheld fire extinguishers with AFFF that the fire department there used to put out burning cars. And the roads in Whidbey Island are at the top of the hill, and the homes are around the edge by the beach. So now there are some plumes that can be traced to a single incident of a burning car and put out the burning car into the well water of the homes between the road and the ocean. So, and there may have been AFFF in portable fire extinguishers used by volunteer firefighters here, like there were there. We don't know. We're still investigating the uses of the foam, not just the chemistry in the ground. Last question? Rick.
So you guys are going to slay the dragon, right? At the going at the manufacturers.
Yeah.
So, not the fire dragon, but
The other dragon.
Dragon adjacent.
Eel dragon.
So, I mean, what is it that you guys need? What are things that us within the public can be doing to help promote that cause and help you guys with the direction that you're going to take on the 3Ms and the DuPonts?
You know, I think just public awareness, and you know, the bigger the PFAS issue gets, you know, the better it is for everybody. You know, I mean, we want everybody to live PFAS free. You know, not just us, but it just needs to be talked about more. You know, I mean, it's only been we've known about it, but it's really only come to light in the last 5 years. Even shorter duration now that we think we have a problem. We start to study the problem. We just start to get you know, our electeds to start funding some of the research and things. So you know, it's just taken a while to get it off the ground. But I think there's movement. You know, there's folks doing the good work like you guys are doing here, and you know, we just have a compelling story because it's killing our members, and we know we were part of the problem to begin with, a huge part of the problem. So I think we're just good speakers on the subject because we know what we did in the past, and we know how much of that cancer we put down on the ground, and how it's affecting our members that live through that. So I just continue this work and keep us in your thoughts and your conversations when you talk to the electeds. You know, our big thing is we have an active lawsuit against the chemical companies. Right now, we're just gathering data from our firefighters, our widows, collecting the data on the cancers. You know, not just the cancers that have taken our members, but you know, the people that have survived them, so that we can get that real hard data, so we can come at them and make our case to, you know, sue the hell out of them, so they can, you know, that's the only thing they're going to listen to, is if they got to pay out big on a lawsuit, then hopefully drive them to make it worth their while to come up with other products minus the carcinogens.
Thank you.
Randy, thank you for coming tonight. And thanks to Julie, thanks to Scott and Bree, as always, and your colleagues. Keep up the good work. Good night, everybody.